Mayflower story. We're going to get to that today. Why must we reflect on the past? Part of the past dictates where the present will be and the future. And what have we done at the institution to tell the truth about the Wampanoags' lives before and during the Mayflower Pilgrims? Our case statement actually is about truth. We're about tolerance, respect, unity, trust, and her story and his story. The entire institution has been very focused in the past up until 2017 on looking at Mayflower Pilgrim's Landing. We did not have any context about the Wampanoag people. There was nothing visible, with exception of a few panels in the room we called the Mayflower Room, with an exhibit that depicted poorly the case of the Native people. When I became the chief exec, I got our board of trustees together, and I thank a couple of our trustees for being on our call today to really understand and embrace this mission of truth. And they let me do that. Together, we worked on it as a group. We've created what really happened in 1620. And really what's happened during after 1620 is where our focus today for this breakout session is. We're going to talk a little bit about the lives of the Mayflower Pilgrims, but the focus is on the Wampanoag. This is their story. So we created an opportunity starting back in 2017 when I took over to actually make a new exhibit. And with the help and the thankfulness of Smoke Signals and WampWorks, we created an entirely dedicated Wampanoag history story. We start the story back in 1605, actually well before the Mayflower Pilgrims landed, to talk about slavery, the stealing of the indigenous people from the East Coast and bringing them to Europe. And we really had some hard discussions about what happened in that time period. Back in 1619, the historic plague went through New England, brought back from the Europeans and killed the native inhabitants. Over 100,000 native residents lost their lives to pandemic. 1620, 2020, 400 years, something to think about. What we've done though during that pandemic, we were blessed to be able to have time. We had planned to have this and had this exhibit ready for our opening in 2020, and it was actually built during the pandemic. WampWorks, a Wampanoag native construction company in Mashpee, Massachusetts, Smoke Signals, all came together to create this content. We had it ready to go for 2020, just didn't quite make it due to the pandemic. But I want to thank them publicly. This exhibit tells us the truth. Our institution had a problem with it. We didn't understand why we need to talk about the Native people, people of color. So we are now focusing ourselves on truth. Black, Indigenous people of color have a message and have a place in our museum that they didn't have before. So we created the exhibit, The Complicated Relationship of the Indigenous Wampanoag and the Mayflower Pilgrims, so that we can talk about these difficult stories and talk about the truth as it is. We had some old murals that were very old European white centric. The natives did not have any distinguishing features. The pilgrims had very distinguishing features. There was just inaccuracy throughout the exhibit. So we wanted to repair that and did. So our exhibit today is clean, it's audio-visual. Prior to COVID, during COVID, we couldn't touch anything. So we actually have earbuds now that you can listen to, but you can actually take a listen to some of our stories through the help of Smoke Signals and through generous work with the state of Massachusetts. Our state senator, Julian Sear, and state representative, Sarah Peak, helped us get some additional state funds to make this happen. But our institution invested greatly into make this a story for the ages. So we welcome people to come and to visit and to talk about the difficult stories, talk about what happened in 1620. When the Mayflower Pilgrims arrived in 1620, they came here. They had time. Obviously, they met the native people. They stole their corn. They took things from them, and that's a problem. And what we found as the true happening of 1621, when the Mayflower left Provincetown because they couldn't find tillable food and soil here because it's so sandy, they settled in Patuxet, which was a desecrated Indian site. It was an Indian village that everyone had died due to plague. They took that over. Patuxet is now what we now know as Plymouth. So 1621, as Isabel said earlier today, is the 400th commemoration of the 400th anniversary of Thanksgiving. What we're known about in Provincetown is that prior to Thanksgiving. And we want folks to know that there was an entire life, a culture, a vibrant community in Provincetown made up of the native people. This was their land. And so our institution resides on their land. And so the synergy between the Mayflower Pilgrims and the native people are something we continue to honor. We work daily to inform our visitors about the native people and what happened when they met the Mayflower Pilgrims. This is the section about the Mayflower Pilgrims in Provincetown, talks about the compact, talks about their first encounter here in Cape Cod, first encounter beach, and in Eastham, Truro, Cornhill, where the corn was stolen. And we want people to think about why this occurred. So our breakout questions were, what's the importance of Provincetown? Pretty clear. The Mayflower Pilgrims, Mayflower Fathers landed there. They signed the Mayflower Compact, and they really met the native people, the Wampanoag people. We reflect on the past because if we don't talk about this being the first opportunity where the Mayflower Pilgrims met the Wampanoags and what the Mayflower Pilgrims did to them, and then the social justice that the Wampanoag Nation gave back to the Pilgrims. They could not have survived that first harsh winter in Cape Cod had it not been for their care to take care of these Europeans who had desecrated their villages and graves. So truly a giving people. And that's what we're finding today. The relationship between the communities, sharing trust and learning. And we're blessed by having that. What have we done? We've made some significant gains in our institution by talking about changing the museum and telling the story. With that, we're going to close my conversation on my part and turn it back to you all for some conversation. Happy to entertain some questions, some thoughts, as you now are in this little breakout session. I hope I didn't go too fast there. Anyone? Halcyon Hurst, I'll call on you. You're a longtime Provincetown native. What is your thought about this this business that we've done, that we're here in the museum? Amelia, you can go ahead and speak. I'd love to hear from you. Halcyon as well. Turn your mic on so we can hear you, because I would love to talk to you. Oh, I don't know how to do that. At the bottom of the below, Amelia, there's a place that says camera on and mic on. If you click on that, there you go.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Right, sorry, I don't know. I think someone did that for me. I don't think I did that.
Oh.
Yeah, I was just interested because you said about changing the start date, which I think is vital. And I just wondered if there were any kind of institutional issues with that or any kind of structural challenges that you had, because it seems like a small change, but I imagine actually bringing it about is quite challenging.
It's quite a challenging. The slides are not advancing. The slides. Did you guys see my whole slideshow?
No, we just heard you.
Oh, rubbish. Well, that's one of the things you just don't know. Uh,
It was
well,
fine. We could follow. It was good.
yep. Well, there we go. That's what you have. That's what the problem is. You know what I'm going to do? Maybe I can just do this. Let's see if I can talk that through. And can you see my slideshow now?
I can see the first slide.
Great. Well, let's see. I have trouble that this is done in some sort of a presentation tool that I just doesn't work for me. I don't know quite what's the problem. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if that happens. Anyway, well, we had a wonderful presentation put together. And yes, first slide, do you want to start restarting your screen share? Sure, I will do that. And I've got Chrome tab up, and there's Google, and there's that, and screen share, and stop. All right. Amelia, can you see my screen?
I can see the first slide again.
There we go.
Oh, I can see. Yes. Now it's changing.
Yeah, now I know why. Okay. So I can talk through a little bit of that. So our breakout session questions were kind of what's the importance. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but I will show you, and I'll click through it while I'm talking to you. Our institution had some significant issues with making the truth known. We were dated back to the 1900s. We've been around since 1892, but it was challenging to get that truthful story out. We had some old artifacts that were not clearly not easily read or visible, and that was difficult. So we contracted with Smoke Signals and Stephen Peters to really help us, WampWorks, a Wampanoag native company, to create an entire new exhibit. And that exhibit is what we are showing today and to you. And to visit us on our website at www.pilgrim-monument.org. So your question, Amelia, is really good in that what changes happened? We had to have leadership change. In order to know that you got a problem, you have to admit you have one. And our prior leadership was not ready to admit we had a problem. So we took about the opportunity of addressing the problem and putting in this experiential story about the Mayflower Pilgrims and about the Wampanoag. It's really the Wampanoag story of what happened before 1620 and after. And it goes back to our mission of truth.
Brilliant. That's really interesting. I just wonder, because obviously leadership change is a significant step. Do you think that the public, the American public that come into your museum, are very much taking this in, very much on this? Do you think the heritage site is kind of leading the way, or actually it was sort of behind the times and that people were much more receptive to a more holistic story, as Belle put it?
Well, our patrons right now are incredibly interested in the story, and they love the fact that we're talking about truth. They love the fact that we are indeed telling their story, telling the Wampanoag people's story in a way that is special. And we've never had that before. So our patrons are really into it. And I think that's something that we've been lacking when we've also had pandemic to deal with. So the more people that come and visit to see and hear the Wampanoag story, the better off this will be. This will be actually the very first collection of Wampanoag history dating back to 1605 in this narrative visual context in one space. Smoke Signals has been amazing at this video content. It's all been written by native voice. Paula Peters, our keynote speaker today, is actually part of this exhibit. She helped edit, she helped write. So it's all a strong message.
Thank you.
I might go back. Hi, David Southern. Nice to meet you today. Do you have any thoughts about what you have heard? I apologize for my presentation not advancing. We had some technical difficulties, perhaps pilot error, but a little technical difficulty. Do you have any questions and thoughts? I can't turn on your mic. Oh, well, you could type in if you want to. Um, Someone asked about truth being a yes, Jamie Pennington has asked our group, truth's very powerful. Do you plan to apply this mission to other areas of the museum? We're actually, thanks for that question, we're actually creating new exhibits around the truthful message, whether it's a truthful story of paying honor to our Jamaican population in Provincetown, which is a huge population. They service our hotels, they service our restaurants, they do a lot of work within the community and are very unseen. So our goal is to this last year, we actually raised the Jamaican flag on Jamaican Independence Day to honor those Jamaicans in town. We actually work with our Portuguese community to honor them, our BIPOC community of our Black, Indigenous people of color that are not seen but are in our community need to be made aware of. So we work, but we're really focusing the agenda in that era. Provincetown has had a huge LGBTQ community, which our museum has really not told much stories about. So it's about truth for us, and we're moving in that direction. I hope that answers your question, Mr. Pennington. Is anyone else that has some questions or thoughts or comments about what we've been doing and where we are? I know that we have. I guess we have time here. Sure. I have my email at the bottom of this, and we'll make sure, since the presentation didn't necessarily go through all the way, we'll make sure that this presentation is available on our website. I'll ask our PR team to ensure that this bit gets done. Oh, Amelia, did you find that the shift to the new exhibit received backlash? We've done a lot of public announcement and public words about it because we were pushing our mission of truth and truth and justice and experience. So yeah, we've not had any backlash. We surely have some questions about why did it happen, and people that had been before be like, well, why did you change the story? No, we didn't change the story. We told the story. And that's really the part of getting back to our truth message. Oh, Halcyon, I'm so sorry you can't get on. I'd love to hear from you. Halcyon Hurst is a native Provincetown resident. She's a noted artist and actress, vocalist, Broadway, London. She's been all over the world and lives here in the Provincetown region. Does anyone else have questions? Heather, you're jumping on today. Stephen, do you have some questions? Elise, I see. Jan, Eleanor, we'd love to hear from you. I'm curious as to what drew you to this session versus the other two, I guess. Maybe we're having technical issues because I'm asking questions and not hearing anyone, which I find very, very challenging.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, Brian. Well, I certainly can hear you now. Thank you for jumping in. How are you?
Well, I caught some of your talk and not all of it, for which apologies. But I do have a question, because when you say about telling the truth, truth has been a movable feast for so many years over, and the Pilgrims are really just a long-standing example of contested truth. I mean, after all, the Thanksgiving holiday was, it had more to do with the American Civil War than with 1620 in many ways. It was an invention of Abraham Lincoln, as I understand it. Um, I'm glad you were doing this exploration of the events from different perspectives.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering again, following on from some of your comments, how well is that perceived? I mean, how well is that advancing a debate in the United States?
Well, that's a really lovely question, Brian. I can speak to where how I perceive it to be, how that is being perceived for us and our visitors that come.
Hmm.
I would like to be able to give you some raving numbers of people that have seen our new exhibit and talking about what we've dedicated to the Wampanoag people and their story. Um, COVID has not been great for us for visitorship and attendance. So in a typical year, we'd have over 100,000 people in our museum in a typical season. We open up April 1st and we close right at the time that the Mayflower Pilgrims land on November 11th, which is when we light the Pilgrim Monument every year in honor of the Mayflower Pilgrims on the 11th of November. What I can tell you is this past season, even with COVID protocols, we had about 25,000 people through the museum this year. Certainly not like a normal year, but they were very interested, and I genuinely get the feeling that people want to hear these stories, um, and um, and I want to also a little bit. I look at the world with kind of rose-colored glasses, that we want more people to understand. And I come from an educationist background, so if you don't teach and provide the content, they're never going to be able to get it, and they'll just keep popularizing the myths and the lack of truth. So that's where we are. And I don't know how next season is going to go. I mean, we've just put in a new inclined elevator lift to bring people, the walking traffic, from the base of Bradford up to the top of the Pilgrim Monument to see our museum and our monument. I'm hopeful that's going to increase our visibility. But doing programs like this, working with people like Stephen Peters, the Bassett Law Project, gets us as an institution out there in front of people.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I think that's interesting that there should be wider perspectives on it. I'm particularly was interested because, of course, the Native Americans of the East Coast are almost entirely forgotten in American
Oh,
history, and
totally.
are entirely unknown, really, except for perhaps the last of the Mohicans, anywhere else.
Yeah.
So I'm finding this very useful. I was astonished in my ignorance to even know that there were any Wampanoag left.
Well, they'd be blessed to know that they are, and that in fact, with our current administration, President Biden is just able to get their land back under native territory. So that's a big blessing for them and their recognition as a tribe. So I'm I'm just really hopeful that we will continue to tell the stories and the connections of the community with the Wampanoag people. Stephen Peters has just joined our board of trustees, which is for the very first time in over 100 years, we have a Native person on our board. We have African Americans on our board, and we have other people of color and genders and orientations. So I'm trying to make a diverse organization. And that's what about tolerance and respect and unity is about, and trust that the information we're sharing is accurate. And the stories are about women and men and people of questioning genders. So that's what life is about today.
Thank you.
Let me read some questions. Alicia, I'm happy to be able to see them now. How do you measure the impact of the exhibition on people's perspectives? Heather, excellent question. We have not done, and I'm a researcher, we have not done any kind of survey research for exit research for the exhibit. We have a telltale as people walk out the door, what do you think? But nothing empirical. My hope is that as we, again, get more traffic and get more people, our communications team will look to be able to bring, try to do a perceptions question. So good question. I don't really have an answer. I have a gut, but I don't have a real, I have a qualitative approach rather than a quantitative answer. Qualitatively, I think people are really getting the perspective and being educated. Qualitatively, I can't tell you how many or in what perception. Eleanor Thorne has asked, will the Wampanoags be feeling satisfied with their new exhibit? It's important to start tipping the balance, but I imagine it's just a start. I could defer to Stephen Peters, Paula Peters, Linda Coombs, the folks that I worked with since 2017 to bring this exhibit to life. I am very proud to say, Eleanor, that this exhibit is all written and composed and built in native voice. No whitewash. So it's all folks that are around the native history and are of Wampanoag descent. So I think they're pretty happy that this old Whiten Museum at the end of Cape Cod has decided to really embrace their true calling for tolerance and acceptance and trust and unity. And I know that I know Stephen is happy about it, and I know Paul is too. So hope that answers your question. It is just a tipping point. We have so many other stories to tell. We have stories of our Jamaican folks, as I said earlier, our Portuguese heritage, our LGBTQ community, telling stories of the generations. We have a lot of work to do. It is just started. Any other further questions and that folks have?
Well, I was just going to say, David, you answered one of my questions about how you've been evolving your board, and that's really encouraging because I know it's really hard putting a board together. And then you've started getting at my other question, which as a historian who's also running this community resource, I was just intrigued with the process that you go of arriving at a point where you can put an exhibit up, knowing that, for years afterwards, even members of the Wampanoag community will probably be disputing different aspects of it. I guess you've started to already talk a little bit about that, of just the process you have to go through of, your exhibits are a sort of a pinpoint in time where you can all get some consensus on this is the history we want to present. And it must be quite a challenge to then, 6 months later read something that's really convincing that, I think we got that aspect incorrect, and changing that and going through that process.
Yeah, David, that's a great observation. Yeah, these things just don't happen overnight, and they don't happen out of the blue. Our institution has been around for well over 100 years, but those what I'll call bureaucratic wheels are very slow, especially in a smaller institution too. And yet, I will say, when we had the opportunity to make a move, we had a brand new president assume the helm as the president of the trustees in January and June of 2017 were the time periods that both Courtney Hurst, our sitting board president, and myself as the ED and chief exec came to be. And we worked crazy during that 2017-2018 year with a handful of newish trustees to bring this change process about. It's a wonderful case study that I'd love to share for those that are interested, but it's never done. You can't stop the work. And as you indicate, what's one story today is another tomorrow. What I do feel so much content or solid about is this information about the Wampanoag Nation has never been in a collection like this in one space, nor has it been presented in this graphical, high energy music, a really good content presentation. in one place that's really designed for a variety of learners. I'm prayerful that the institution will have this for. We're going to have this for a while. We invested $226,000 US into this, and I know that it's going to stick with us, and it can grow with us. I think the other thing is working with folks like Smoke Signals who've helped us get to this point. We'll be doing some new stories. I think that this conference today could be part of the exhibit in some format. Again, it's never done. I keep thinking, oh, my list will get empty today, and 3 things come up. So it's the way life is, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's just unfortunately, our history has always been pretty politicized, how we present our history. We're seeing the latest version of it now with this kind of contrived controversy over critical race theory. But I think history should be constantly evolving. And I think, I think having been to the museum, I think you've struck a really good balance of presenting a much different perspective than many of us have had for decades and centuries, while I think giving across the sense that it's iterative, it's evolving.
Yeah, well, it is, and I thank you for that comment. Sometimes you do all this work, and I've got board members they're constantly supporting and working, and we all feel like, oh, do people notice that? And it's nice to hear others that we're not in our sphere to say, yeah, that's really great that you're doing that, because that makes us feel good. So I say thank you for that recognition. And I'm really thankful that the conference, I thought that Sandra's opening today was beautiful. I did indeed bring the Wampanoag perspective to Bassett Law. And so I'm thankful she acknowledged that, because it's important for us to share these resources. This is about building connections and community. Let's just say we have a couple questions here. Eleanor I live in London, where the Mayflower and his crew started. I run a tuned in London world music series and have commissioned a song cycle, Memories of the Mayflower, but I'm unaware. I didn't manage to get something from the Wampanoag side. Oh, Eleanor, my suggestion to you would be is if you want to pop an email to me, I'll make sure that you and Stephen Peters get connected. Stephen has all the connections with the Wampanoag Nation singers and dancers. They have an actual group we've had them at the monument. They're an amazing, powerful cultural experience. Be lovely for your series. So you're happy to do that, send a note and we'll be happy to connect you. Viola has asked, but you have to spread the mission and message from Cape Cod to the rest of New England and the US. This is so critical now, considering the political climate, whereby white America is scared to death that they may be forced to share their space with the others. Viola, I will tell you that is our fervent wish, is that we share what we have here in Provincetown with the rest of the world. Indeed, it's time to start talking, and not just talking, but doing and showing by example and leading that difficult challenges and difficult situations have to be addressed. And it's my commitment as the leader of our institution to be visible, be forward, and to be truthful, and to tell the stories so that the Wampanoag people of New England are connected with all of us around the world in knowing what happened in Cape Cod in the early 1600s and what happened after that, so that we colonize what colonization was about. So we're happy to do that, and thankful for your question. Feel free to come back to me. I think Elise is ready to pull us off the stage, would be my guess.
Obviously, I don't want to interrupt. Thank you. That was a really interesting session there. And thank you to everyone that submitted comments and questions as well. But we are expecting that the next breakout sessions will begin soon. So if you do want to choose your next session, if you go to the events tab at the top of the page, you'll be presented with the options there. But again, David, thank you so much for that talk. So much to digest and so interesting.
Thank you so much indeed. You all have a great day, and thank you again for participating.